Are you ready?
This is From the Backline, a soccer podcast from Vancouver, covering the game at home and abroad. Here are your hosts, Mark Daly and Jorge Mendoza.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Episode 298 of From the Backline. Mark Daly here, and the button meister himself, Jorge Mendoza, clicking and pressing things on the other side. I don't know what's happening, but apparently something is recording, so that's all good. And you're giving me that look, and we just started. Anyways, Jorge, how's it going, my friend?
I was just thinking how much technology has advanced over the last 13 years since we started this podcast. Because, you remember back in the day when we started this podcast, when before it was cool to have a podcast, we started this, and we eventually bought a mixer, and we had, and it was like a bit of a process. But now we literally just sit down basically on a Zoom call, and I just click one button. This is record, and off we go. And here we are.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the fun thing about it. I mean, I remember some of like the dodgy apps that we tried to record, like Skype calls and things, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. I mean, some of it was just really, really bad. And then it got to the point where we had, like you said, we had a setup and it worked really well. And now this is just, absolutely for the time. I mean, this is a lot more convenient because we can just sit here and we don't even literally need to be in the same room. That's always a lot more enjoyable, but it's really cool to see how the technology has evolved. And hey, I forgot to mention, because we were just chatting before we came on air here. So I just got back from a trip. I was in Japan for a couple of weeks. Do you want to know the number one football kit I saw in Japan after Samurai Blue?
Mexico?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just like, I don't know what the Mexican infatuation with Japan was, but I mean, it wasn't just like locals wearing L3 kits. I mean, they were legit Mexicans, and they were there and they were representing and they were awesome. And it was just, it was cool to see that pride on display. So
it was the best selling kit out of the World Cup, out of everyone. There's like 5 million.
100%. That was the best kit by a country mile at the World Cup earlier this summer. Yeah, so it was cool to see a lot of folks, a lot of your fellow Mexicans on the road, and it was fun. I think I have to break down and buy one myself, because that is just too nice of a kit not to have in the collection. It's the best kit since the 98 Mexican kit, which was basically, this is an evolution of it, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a homage, if you will.
Yeah. Well, they put it together rather nicely. So, anyways, I'm back. Looks like you're calling from jail, looking by the sort of bizarre background you've got there. But I mean, it is kind of like jail because you're in Ontario, which is punishment for shoplifting. Yep.
Of course.
It's worth. Jorge, you're busted for stealing that Snickers bar. We sentence you to 2 weeks in Ontario.
In Ottawa,
in Ottawa. I shouldn't laugh because I've got family in Ottawa, but they know I like to make the jokes. So there you go. But here we are. And of course, the World Cup is well in the rearview mirror. The Whitecaps have been busy. We are on the eve of another match against Dallas on Saturday night, and we're just in the aftermath of the match on Wednesday night against the Houston Dynamo. The big news of the week is the Whitecaps defeated the Seattle Sounders 2-0 at Lumen Park or Field or whatever they call it down in Seattle to win a record 9th Cascadia Cup. Yeah.
CenturyLink. It will always be CenturyLink, just like it will always be Twitter.
Yes.
Whatever the name is now, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's CenturyLink Field.
I have to admit, though, I'm a little bit disappointed in that match, which the Whitecaps won 2-0. I was just like, at that point, I'm like, I want 5, I want 10, I want 15. I was getting greedy. Like, admittedly, I was getting greedy, but for the right reasons. It's just when we already had them on the ropes, it's just at that point, it's just like, I want to see them feel pain. And I want them to feel the pain at home. You know what I mean?
Hey, man, I get it, but I think that given how things were going,
Mm-hmm.
getting the win was absolutely massive. Because when you think
100%.
about
Yeah.
it, and you look at the results, right? Like the Whitecaps, the last time the Whitecaps won a match against either MLS or Liga MX opposition, it was May 23rd. It was before the World Cup break, right? They defeated San Diego 4-2. Since then, and obviously coming back from the World Cup, they lost against Cincinnati. They drew 0-0 against Minnesota. They drew 1-1 against LAFC. And then they lost 3 in a row against Atlante,
Mm-hmm.
Juarez, and Tigres. So they had 6 matches. I mean, no counting the Canadian Championship, but against MLS or Liga MX opposition, they were winless in 6.
Mm-hmm.
So things were not looking great. I was not feeling super positive about the form coming back from the World Cup, and I was starting to ask questions like, "Oh man, is it really going to affect like that extended break the performance?" So the fact that they went to Seattle against a huge rival, as we know, and they were able to put a performance, a shout out, but also a 2-0 performance that sealed the Cascadia Cup. I thought that it was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of funny too, because when I was watching the match on Sunday night, I had this weird feeling like at I was feeling a little bit kind of anxious and a little bit. I was obviously excited as I usually do for like derby matches, but I never really got to the point where I felt that they were going to lose the match. Like I felt that there was at least a draw in it. I felt that they were going to win this one, and I mean it took a while for the goals to come. Right? I mean, Rayan Alumi didn't score until the 77th minute, and then it took another 5 minutes for Thomas Mueller to seal it for them. But I didn't really get to the point where I don't think they're going to pull this off. I just had this. And it is weird because, as you say, there was all those, less than flattering results in all those matches in different competitions leading up to this one that sort of statistically it wasn't really looking well in their favor. But I just had a good feeling and they delivered and, bring some silverware back up the I-5 to Vancouver to where it should rightfully belong. And I'm happy for another year. At least in Cascadia Cup. Now there's obviously more business at hand that really needs to be taken care of in MLS and, the Canadian Championship, but the league needs to be focused on now because got to get back on some consistency, I guess, right? I mean, if they can stay consistent, then I think the results will come. And I guess we can dive into that in a couple of moments as well.
Yeah, and I think that the key word that you just said was consistency, right? Because after the high of highs of defeating Seattle on the road, snatching the Cascadia Cup for the 9th time, which is great because again, a few years ago, even the Cascadia Cup was not coming to Vancouver. So the fact that they were able to once again lift that trophy, it was a good boost. And then you go into the game on Wednesday, which, hey, credit to Houston. They're now top of the Western Conference with one extra, one game more than the Whitecaps, but they're at the top of the Western Conference right now. And they went into BC Place and they played a very solid game. It was a hugely and highly frustrating match for the Whitecaps, which one could argue that they deserve better. That they definitely didn't deserve to lose the match.
Mm-hmm.
But Houston came in, they did their and they executed their game plan to perfection. They frustrated the Whitecaps, didn't give a lot of opportunities, and they were clinical on the other end of the pitch, and they took the 3 points away from the Whitecaps at home. And I was just looking at the results throughout the year, and shout out to Houston because the Whitecaps have had 4 losses all season long. 2 of those have come against Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, good point. Good point.
They are up there with the Whitecaps, at the top of the Western Conference. But not only they're getting the job done against the good teams, which in this case is the Whitecaps. So it was a frustrating night on Wednesday, going from the high of highs of Saturday to sort of like a frustrating night on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a great point. And frustrating is the perfect word to describe that match against the Dynamo, because compared to the match a couple days previously down in Seattle, I didn't have that same vibe. Like, it just felt like I don't know. It's like it's not like they're playing horrible. They had a couple of half chances here or there, but I wasn't feeling it. The vibe was just a little bit off, if you know what I mean. And then, of course, like when like Alumi gets the goal called back on that foul. I mean, honestly, like the way when that went to VAR, you could have picked either one, Kubas or whoever else. There was two players involved there. I just felt that they're going to call one or either of those players on that foul, and that ball's coming back, or that goal's coming back, which is disappointing because when it happened to that point in the match, I was just like, damn, that feels like that was the only goal in it. And then, Larraz had like several chances right at the end of the game, and probably, he put it well over the crossbar, which was disappointing. I don't, get disappointed or upset that he tried. It's just that it was disappointing that at least he didn't get the shot on target. But it was frustrating because, like I say, I felt the goal that was disallowed was the one goal that they were going to get that night, and unfortunately, it didn't stand. It wasn't like they played horribly, but as you said, Houston was just very efficient in executing their game plan, and it stifled the Whitecaps, and just they did just enough to preserve that scoreline. But did you not think right at the very end, when they coughed up the ball, that they were going to score that second goal literally moments before the full time was going to be called? But credits that was saved. I was just because that I thought if they made it 2-0 literally in the dying seconds of second half injury time, that just would have been unfortunate and unfortunate for the Whitecaps. But they just hung on, and there wasn't even time at that point to try and get it back up the pitch to the other end. But yeah, disappointing end to what had started off to be a very promising week, right?
Yeah, and an important week, because we always think about, when we get to like match day 31, 32, 33, and like, we can only get like 2 points more or 3 points more. And, those points are as valuable as the ones now, right? So like it is these kind of matches, like the one against San Jose earlier in the year that they lost at home as well. The ones that at the end of the year are the ones that they could have taken you to the next level. Just like last year when they were like just a couple points from San Diego, and instead of, in the ending at the top of the West. These are the matches that, like, when you leave on the table, these points are the ones that kind of come and bite you in the butt at the end of the year. So hopefully now that Dallas is coming to town, they sort of like return to the highs that we saw against Seattle and kind of like the consistent form that we were seeing before the World Cup, before the World Cup break.
Well, you make a great point there, because when you say that, you're looking now towards, or we're looking now towards the end of the season, Whitecaps have now played 19 matches. So we basically have 2/3 of the season already played. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at that, because we were always looking at that World Cup break, that we're starting the season, we're going to play a whole bunch of games, and there's going to be this extended layoff. And the Whitecaps, well, first of all, they were on the road forever, and then everybody was off when the World Cup was on. And then all of a sudden you come back, you play a handful of games, it's like, wow, 2/3 of the season is already gone. And it's important because, as you say, that the Whitecaps have been pretty shaky since the World Cup break across most of the other competitions. And the one thing that they had in their favor, the fact that they had all these matches in hand on these different clubs that around them in the table, that's starting to play itself out. So Dynamo have played 20, Whitecaps have played 19, LAFC has played 21, then San Jose, Dallas, St. Louis, and Colorado have all played 20 matches. So those were those matches where if the Whitecaps could have like taken home 3 points, that would have been an opportunity to sort of extend or maybe build on the lead at the top of the table. And I think that's interesting because when I was watching the match last night, it was very much of this has like the feel of more like saving a single point tonight rather than being able to add 3 more points onto the tally. So unfortunately, what with Houston winning that game, the Whitecaps and the Dynamo swapped places in the table. So Houston's now got 38, Vancouver has 37. So there's a little bit of a gap between the Whitecaps and LAFC, who are in third with 34 points, and it's pretty tight all the way down to 6 with St. Louis. So it's not like they have a lot of luxury to have more games that they either play bad and lose, or they play decent like they did against Houston and just don't even get a single point out of it. So they still have a game in hand, at least one game in hand compared to everybody else from first down to 7th. But those opportunities, they're always gone. They're going to be on a level playing field, and all those games in hand are going to disappear. And that's when that buffer or that insurance of having those matches in hand, you don't have that anymore. So literally each match, it might not be a 6-pointer, but very much last night losing to the Dynamo was crucial because now they've dropped down a spot in the standings.
The games in hand are great on paper, but when they come, you have to make them count. Otherwise, they mean nothing, right? And so these are this is what I mean, right? These are the kind of games that they have to get the full points in order to solidify their position in the table. So we're not in the same in the same spot as we were last year, right? That like they lost out and came second, and I mean they made it all the way to the MLS Cup final, but still, like they could have hosted more games along the way. So yeah, it's important. They're important. I mean they are clearly in a position where you have to think that they're going to make the playoffs. That has to be like a collapse of epic proportions in order for that not to happen. Mm-hmm. But now we're looking to really get to the next level and finish top of the West. And yeah, so I think that starting with Dallas has to be and taking the 3 points for Dallas is sort of imperative at this particular point in time.
The one thing that I think that is in the Whitecaps' favor, at least in the league over the next 2 to 3 weeks, is the quality of maybe not the quality of their opponents, but their opponents and where they are in the table. So Saturday night against FC Dallas. Dallas is a top 5 Western Conference team. Then they're playing St. Louis, so a little bit further down. I think they're 7th or whatever it is. Then they play the Galaxy, Austin. They've got Sporting Kansas City in there. Actually, they play SKC after FC Dallas. So they do have some opponents coming up that, at least on paper, or at least to the standings, aren't quite as difficult as maybe playing like a top 5 or a top of the table clash that we've seen. But some of them won't be super easy either. But the Sounders, going back to that one, despite having literally the entire squad injured, still put up a pretty good fight, right? I mean, as much as, we want to, talk them down and belittle them and all those fun things that you do to your rivals and to, like the Sounders, you have to show them respect, because despite the massive detriment and the negative position they find themselves in with such a devastated squad, they still performed very difficult. But you have to think, though, that the Whitecaps, when they play SKC, that's got to be 3 points in the bag. Austin is 14th in the Western Conference. That's got to be 3 points in the bag. LA Galaxy is 10th in the Western Conference. You got to think that you're going to fancy your chances against them. Obviously, FC Dallas and St. Louis might be a little bit more challenging, but if you're a good team and if this squad has evolved to the point that we keep talking about that, hey, this isn't the Whitecaps of even 3, 4, 5 years ago, these should all be games that are going to be winnable for them, right? Or at least that's my take.
That's what logic would dictate, and that's what we're sort of hanging our hat on like the quality of this team and the level of performances that they, for better or worse, accustom us to see. It's interesting to me. I wanted to ask your thoughts on the return of Ryan Gold. Like we have talked about Ryan Gold obviously being gone for basically all last season and a good portion of the beginning of this season. Now he seems to be more on the pitch on a consistent basis. And we discussed here what would happen when Ryan Gold was healthy and the way in which he was going to be pair up with Thomas Muller and what would that mean? Like, what are sort of like your thoughts on how he's sort of like returning into the fold?
So, just talking about like Gold and just the side in general, I this is kind of the way I'm trying to logic this out. Is what with Sebastian Berhalter leaving the club recently and going to play for Middlesbrough, I kind of feel that the Whitecaps really kind of haven't found that I don't want to say level, but the equilibrium. I don't think all the pieces have settled into the right place quite yet. And I don't think we've quite seen from Gold what we expect. I mean, there's no doubting his talent and his quality and what he means to this team. But one of the other things that we have to take into account is that Brian White has been injured and hopefully he'll be back a little bit, or not before too much longer. And I just feel that we haven't quite seen the Gold that we're used to, but to maybe expect him to come back and do all the amazing things that he did before he had that devastating injury and such a prolonged time like off the pitch. I mean, we're not talking about a couple of weeks or a month or even a couple of months. We're talking like a year and a half, basically. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, there's flashes of the Gold that we all know and that we all love. So there's that promise, but you take one very impactful player out of the side in Berhalter, who's no longer a figure. And I understand why people talk about it. I mean, because we're obviously, or at least I am, I'm talking about it right now. And I always, I kind of love and hate these conversations at the same time. It's like, well, I don't want to dwell on Berhalter because he's not here anymore. He decided to move on. But at the same time, it's an important conversation to have because he meant so much to the side. He contributed in so many different ways. And then at some point, I think we're expecting, okay, well, Gold is back and everything will be good. And it'll take him some time to reestablish himself. And as I say, hopefully Brian White comes back soon. Although I think that Alumi has done an amazing job and he's a young guy with a very, very bright future. But I think we're going to have to wait. And I think there's going to be a bit of, what do you want to call it? Gold reestablishing and rediscovering himself and how he fits in and how he plays and just how maybe the side and the game has maybe evolved in this very, very long time that he hasn't been on the pitch. I mean, it's one thing to go to training. It's one thing to watch tape. It's one thing to watch, the matches live at home and on the road, but it's not the same as being out there. And it doesn't matter who you are, and being away for that long has to have had an effect on you. And I think the question is, how long does it take Ryan Gold to really get back to be that player that we know he is and have the impact that we know that he can make? Because I think that's what the Whitecaps really, really need at the moment, because Berhalter had a similar impact on the side and, he's no longer here.
He's dead to us.
In those exact words.
So speaking of how Berhalter been gone and the evolution of this team, there has been a couple of additions to the squad. The first one being Serbian midfielder Alexa Vetkovic. That I'm sure that I did not butcher that. He's a box to box midfielder. The words of Axel Schuster, he brings great energy, intensity to every match, a relentless work rate. You have to think that this is on paper the replacement for Berhalter as he left. He's a U22 initiative player, so he's 21 years old. He's very young, but still he has had some meaningful first team minutes in Serbia. He started 52 matches out of 73 appearances. He featured for the Serbia's U21 team. He was invited into the Serbian senior national team in March. They had a camp back then. So the credentials seem like a player with a lot of potential and a good addition to the team. I'm excited to see what he brings in, and especially I think that this is something that we had discussed here in the podcast. I think that the front office have really sharpened their acquisitions, whether it's on loan or just as a outright transfer, and they haven't missed a lot of players as of late. So if they're bringing this player in, which again on paper it seems to me like a clear replacement for Slovak Berhalter, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Alexa Vetkovic has to offer to this team.
Well, you know what my sort of reaction to that is a lot of people might say, well, he's not a Sebastian Berhalter. I don't know who these people are. I may have just made them up, but who was Sebastian Berhalter when he came to Vancouver? Right?
If he hadn't come to Vancouver, he might have retired from football.
Yeah.
He kept like Houston. Austin basically sent him out packing through the back door. So who is the next Berhalter? Well, it could be. We won't know until we find that person, right? And I think Vetkovic, again, seems to have the credentials to be that player.
Exactly. And I mean, Berhalter's time in Vancouver is rather remarkable. I mean, as you said, he could have been somebody that walked away and hung up his boots at that point, but he had an incredible time here and he became such a meaningful player to the team and contributed at such a high level. And he earned an opportunity to move to a different, bigger, better opportunity, whatever you want to call it, away from MLS. But as we've seen, and with the Whitecaps, that, as you say, that they've been pretty good at recruiting players to come in. I think I go back to what I was saying just now is when it comes to the Whitecaps and the state that they're in right now. I mean, we're seeing players come back from injury. I mean, Gold is back. I mean, how good was it to see Sam Matakubi out there, at least for like 3.5 minutes or whatever it was against Houston? So it's nice to be getting players back, as much as it's disappointing to see players, obviously, like Berhalter leaving. But if you get another one in, but the only thing, my question when you have like a young player like that is, how long will it take them to really find their spot? They're obviously going to have to earn it. You know, it's not like this is like a marquee elite level player coming into the Whitecaps, but you know, that's what part of the fun of MLS is, and being a fan and watching these under the radar kind of signings. I mean, Berhalter was 100% an under the radar kind of signing, and look at how he evolved. So will lightning strike twice? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not, but it'll be fun to see. And hopefully in the meantime that the Whitecaps get back on track and they do it ASAP starting Saturday night against FC Dallas at BC Place.
And speaking of more young players coming into the squad, the Whitecaps announced today that they're bringing in player on loan for basically the next year. It's 20-year-old Colombian Sebastián Ramírez, He is 20 years old. And again, another young player coming from South America. He has 46 appearances and 26 starts with in the basically first division of Colombia's tournament with Fortaleza. He's been part of the U20s Colombia's program. And again, like he's a defender, so obviously it's a position that we had discussed how it needs bolstered because of you have two nominal central backs with Veselinovic and Blackman, but after that, like you kind of like play patch up with Priso or Laborda. Bringing in a player that is quote unquote a specialist in that position, I think it's important. And the one thing that I thought, Mark, when I saw the information about Sebastian Ramirez is he sounded to me an addition like Pedro Vite was.
Oh, okay.
Young South American player, lots of upswing. And obviously that worked out great. I mean, Pedro Vite obviously went down to Mexico. He plays for Pumas in Liga MX. He started like the old matches for Ecuador in the World Cup in the last couple months. And I feel like this is one of those. This is kind of like one of those diamonds in the rough, if you will, from South America with young players coming in and really taking their game to the next level in MLS and with the Whitecaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes a little bit too easy to say that a signing like that is just for squad depth and to fill out the team, but there's certainly opportunities for players of that caliber, and that's what I was kind of saying. With a little bit or a few minutes ago, is that's part of the fun of this sport and this league and this club is just seeing how they replace players and how players develop, and a lot of football is when players get their moment, when they get their opportunity and what they do with those. Some of them do, some of them don't, and like I say, it's part of the fun, right?
Yeah, so we'll see. And just to round up the news of roster, not a new player, but a player that has been with this roster for a while, but who will be sticking around for a while is the Whitecaps also have brought back, well, not brought back, but like signed an extension with Ralph Priso, the Canadian. He's going to be with the club until the 28-29 Major League Soccer, a club option for an extra year until 2030. I mean, he's 24 years old, and he has really blossomed over the last couple of years with the Whitecaps to the point where I guess he was close to making the Canadian squad to go into the World Cup earlier. So great news. I think that Priso has grown as a player even from when he arrived from Colorado, and it's a good piece for this team because it gives you a little bit of flexibility. He can play as a center back. He can play as a defensive midfielder. So having that kind of versatility is always good to have in the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it gives Sorensen the opportunity to change tactically, like on the fly, and alter formations during the middle of a match without having to burn a substitution in some cases, right? And Priso is an interesting player because he's almost arguably better as a center back as he was as a midfielder, and he was a pretty good midfielder. So I think that he's a very unique kind of a tactical hybrid kind of player that I think because he is a converted midfielder that he's going to see the game a little bit different from the back line. See how I did that?
Yeah.
That's clever, right? It was also kind of a complete fluke, but it's he is a unique player, and also being a Canadian, there's that roster compliance and things like that, and he's still relatively young at 24 years old. So I mean, arguably, we haven't really even seen him at his pride, or in his prime yet. But an important player for the Whitecaps to have. You just need good quality players like that in a squad, and that's why I think that it's important that not only he's here, but he's extended, is going to be staying for a little bit or a little longer. Anyways.
He's not built as a center back, or at least as a modern center back. Right? Modern center backs are like tall, big, and strong, and he's physically powerful, but he's not very tall. However, I have never felt worried about when about whether or not he'll be able to fill in nicely as a central back whenever he's had to cover there, which just speaks a little bit more about like his ability to really slot into those positions. I just kind of like you were mentioning. So good to see Friso, not only because he's been a great addition, but also because hey, he's a Canadian young player. So it's a good thing that he's playing at home and the way in which he has played and the way that the Whitecaps have given the confidence, and obviously Sorensen has given the confidence to play. Hopefully, he continues to make an argument for him to get into Jesse March's team with Team Canada. So, yeah, I think all in all, like, great news with Ralph Friso coming back.
Just on that, on the Canadians. Just on the Canadian men's national team, what an opportunity that is now, and like how many Canadian players want to get in on that and be a part of that. I mean, it was such an exciting run that we saw Canada go on during the World Cup, and I think that they got as far as I wouldn't say expecting, but at least as far as I was hoping for. Which was great, and I think that it really inspired a lot of us as fans, as supporters, and I'm hoping that that's the larger, and I'm sure it will, is the another effect of that is that players in MLS and beyond, Canadian players, will want to do whatever they can to be a part of it as well. So just a little added bonus there. Should we talk about FC Dallas? We should talk about FC Dallas before we wrap it up and go home for another week. I'm already home, so at least I don't have to go anywhere, but I do have to go upstairs and clean a very messy kitchen, so I'll try and prolong this as long as I can. Yeah, no, not really, but this is fun. You know, the kitchen, not so much. But yeah, so FC Dallas will be here 6:30 Saturday night to play our Vancouver Whitecaps. So Vancouver has had a pretty strong home record this year, 7-1-1. But of course, Wednesday was not exactly bueno. The one thing they do have an advantage is they did beat FC Dallas 3-2 down at Toyota Stadium back in June or May or whatever it was. It seems like such a long time ago with that World Cup in between. So they've already beaten this team before. The one thing about Dallas is they seem to be able to, or they struggle to contain high pressing teams where on the road. And so the Whitecaps have a couple of things that are going for them. The of course up front, some of the chemistry, some of the squad selection. I mean, it's a short week when you're playing 3 matches in 7 days. I mean, fortunately, it's just been Seattle, Vancouver, but still there's been a little bit of travel. There's been some training and a whole lot of serious football in between that even if you're playing at home and close to home, that's going to wear. There's exactly a lot of recovery. So hopefully, Brian White is not out for too much longer, but we've seen Sabi and Mueller and Alumi. And how good is this Ryan Alumi kid? 18 years old. He's definitely had some moments, and I just feel that this is going to be a player that we're going to be talking about in the years to come. I mean, he seems very clever, seems very mature. I mean, he went to the World Cup with very poised. Great word choice. Very poised, absolutely. And he did get selected to Tunisia's World Cup squad, even though he didn't get a chance to play. So, I mean, just being a players in that World Cup environment must have really been such a positive experience for such a young guy. So, I think, there's a lot to be excited about. But the question is, can players like Alumi and Mueller and Sabi, can they make up for that very reliable production that we tend to see from Brian White when he plays up top? So that'll be one lingering question. Yeah, that's right. You just have to find a way to score goals because, you can't throw all your eggs in one basket. And especially when it comes to hamstring injuries like that. I mean, he's just reporting, or I think they're reporting now, just a little bit of tightness in White's hamstring. But until he's 100% cleared to play, means that you're going to have to play without him. And as far as I know, probably won't be selected or be starting at least on Saturday night. So everybody else has to pick up their socks and hopefully bang some balls into the back of the net, put a bulge in the old onion bag, as that rather bizarre and well-beloved saying from years ago. There's got to be something good. You've got to have something similar and as bizarre from Mexico. Don't hold out on me, bro.
Not that it comes to mind. But,
okay, we'll put that in the parking lot. We'll revisit that at some point.
I'll come back to you in a week.
Come back to me next week. Fair enough. But what are you feeling on this one? Do you see, like, I think there's an opportunity for the Whitecaps to win. I just don't know if they can pull it off. I think it's going to be a close game.
I think it's going to be close. I think to be honest, dude, like it doesn't matter what I feel. Like they have to find a way to get it done. That's what it boils down to. Like, this is a winnable match. These are big matches that they have to win at home in order to keep this momentum, in order to get to the place where they want to be. So I'll be a little concerned if they don't bring the 3 points to the tally, especially coming after the Houston game.
Yeah, absolutely. That game, losing to Houston the other night definitely was like that classic 6-pointer, because they were only 2 points ahead of them, and losing, of course, now means that they're a point behind, and they can't afford to lose any more ground. I have to check the schedule to see who Houston is playing this weekend, but you can't focus on others. You just got to focus what's within your control, and what's within their control right now, hopefully, is to put a solid 90 minutes together, go out there and take those 3 points and move forward. Because then at the end of the week, I mean, if you say, okay, well, we went down, beat Seattle at CenturyLink, I'm just going to go with that. Yeah, sure, we lost it at home to Houston in a tight game where we did actually play horrible. We played pretty decent, but then we recovered to beat FC Dallas. Feels and sounds a lot better than saying, well, we beat Seattle on the road, but then lost 2 at home to Houston and Dallas. I know which option I would rather like. Of course, I would have liked the option that no longer exists, where they win all 3 games in a row, but that's off the table now. But it would be a nice recovery at the very least if they could take 3 points off of Dallas on Saturday night.
Yeah. This hopefully we're talking about a win next week.
Yeah, I hope so, for sure. I'm feeling something like a 2-1 or 1-0 or something like that. I would put it out the realms of possibility, maybe like a 1-1, 1-1 draw or something like that. I don't really see a lot of goals in this game for whatever reason. So there's that.
Half a goal to 0 win. I don't care.
Exactly. That's just the front edge of the ball that just goes over the byline, and they all count. Rather, if it doesn't matter if they just sneak over or they go screaming through the netting at the back of the goal. So, yeah, cool.
All right.
Cool. Well, let's wrap it there. We'll see everybody hopefully at BC Place on Saturday night, 6:30, Vancouver Whitecaps versus FC Dallas. Are they going to do the diving thing? Remember years ago, the Southsiders used to hold up the scorecards for the diving? Because like they were notoriously bad like 10 years ago for all the flopping around. And that was classic cynical supporter humor. That was funny. So anyhow. Cool. Everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.